So when did you start to write about this? Like, or what made you want to start to write your book and sort of like put these ideas down on paper for other people? Like, where did that start?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, it probably started for me in earnest when I decided to do this experiment where I chose not to use any digital devices for a period of about a year. That, I was in a special situation that I was taking a sabbatical and I was going to be able to leave a lot of my work responsibilities, aside. And because I was doing that, I decided that part of the experience for me would be making time and space for everything else in life that wasn't staring at screens. So I decided that I would not use a cell phone for a year, and I didn't use computers, or at least the internet, for about 6 months. And part of it was just as a challenge for myself that I felt like I used to be a really well-rounded person through, the 80s, the 90s, that I used to have all of these hobbies like photography and being in a dark room, going to bookstores and cooking, and
Mm.
that a lot of even playing instruments, making arts, that a lot of these hobbies had kind of been fallen to the wayside as I started spending more and more of my time looking at computers and being on social media. So I thought, I'm lucky enough to have this opportunity where I don't have to work for a year. What if I get rid of this other sort of, invisible work that I do of being on the internet and producing content for, social media platforms to profit off of?
Mm.
Um, so that sort of opened up this whole new window to me, this whole new perspective of looking at the world, where I wasn't using my phone for anything. And once you put your phone aside, you realize you need all of these substitute devices kind of to replace it. Like now you need a map or an atlas to know where you're going. You might need a phone book to find the phone number of the restaurants down at the corner. You need an alarm clock to wake you up in the morning. You need something to play music on. There's kind of an endless list of substitutions that needs to happen. But as part of that experience, I mean, part of it was just the challenge to myself, knowing that I would be able to do it. But the realization that there are internal and external influences, that a lot of people just have this inner craving to be online and to communicate with other people. I don't have that quite as much as I feel a lot of people do, but that there's also this extrinsic pressure. There are people who need to be able to reach you or who wants to be able to reach you. And it's a lot of work to try and extricate yourself from all of that and change other people's expectations. Nowadays, you think of just all the apps that we're expected to use as a normal part of day, that there are people who clock in and out of their jobs every day on an app. You'd have a hard time convincing your supervisor that you should be able to, fill out a piece of paper or something instead of using an app. So for me, it was born in this lived experience that I had of not using digital media and really finding a lot of good coming out of it. But at the same time, I don't think I would be able to do it again today. That was in 2009. And, my dependence on devices and platforms has only increased, as has probably yours and most people's.
Yeah, no, you could definitely say that. I mean, I was talking to earlier in the year a girl who I went to school with, and she is doing a lot of filmmaking and sort of artwork in that kind of area. Yeah, photography and filmmaking, basically. And she was telling the story about when Instagram first came out and when we were in school, and I was like, wow, like that wasn't even that long ago. Like when you're really in the grand
Mm-hmm.
scheme of things, like that just wasn't Instagram, like that thing
Yeah.
that I don't know, like the last week that I didn't check it. And that's not even the worst one, but just Instagram on its own, I was like, wow, like that came out when we were in school, and look where it's like, that was like 2011 or something like that. It's like no time ago. It's really crazy. But I'm curious actually, what was there something that triggered that feeling that you had before you took your sabbatical, where you wanted to figure out, or you just decided that you were going to take a big a break from your phone and screen time as possible? Like, was there a moment where you really started to think, I need to do this, or was there something that happened to you, you read that made you, that like gave you that idea in the first place?
One of the key moments for me was probably that I went to a museum exhibit where they had a lot of correspondence of the artist Edward Gorey, if you know him. Um, and he had written a series of these beautiful letters to his mother that, I mean, they were just gorgeous. I mean, I had never produced any letters like this back in my own days of correspondence. But that sort of sent me on this track of realizing I used to write these really thoughtful, beautiful letters to people that were almost like, exploring my soul on paper and then sending it to people that I cared about. And that was a moment for me that sort of started me thinking about all of the other things that I used to do, that I used to enjoy, that I used to think were creative or artistic, and that I'm just not doing anymore. And the more I thought about it, the more that there was.
Hmm. I mean, I guess, have you seen that film, The Social Network? Or not The
Oh,
Social Network, sorry, The Social Dilemma.
I do, and I always confuse the titles of those as well. I did, yeah. I'm teaching a class now in fake news, which I've taught before, and I'm having my students watch and think about that movie, and seeing their responses to it has been kind of interesting.
Hmm. I mean, I definitely feel like it really, it pulled, like when I saw it for the first time, like these were already ideas that I'd been thinking about, but just those scenes, where they've got the family in
Yeah,
the kitchen, especially the one in the kitchen where the mum takes the phone from her daughter and she puts it in one of those like plastic timer things, and says you can't have this for 1 hour, and within like 2 minutes she's broken it open
yeah.
because she cannot handle being without the phone. And that's like, that was so real. Like it was so real. And the moments where she was sat down at dinner and they were all just on their devices, and you just think that is like, that's everyone's experience now. That's like, I don't remember. Well, I mean, like I'm really trying to consciously not do it now. And I feel a lot better for it. Actually, and like, obviously I'm human and imperfect and I still do it. But like, if you find yourself, especially like since you took that sabbatical, or just like looking around and going, wow, we're all just on our phone. Like, it's, those moments are scary to me.
No, absolutely. Yeah. At the same time, I do want to recognize that this recent documentary is sort of an interesting stage in a conversation that's been happening for a long time. That there has been criticism over the course of the millennium that's been kind of gathering steam, in which a lot of people have been asking similar questions about what influence our devices are having on us as individuals, on our psychologies, as well as on our relationships with other people and our families around the dinner table. So that this conversation has been happening for a long time, but until now, it wasn't these people from the hallowed halls of technology that were leading the conversation. So that in the past, people were kind of dismissed if they asked a lot of critical questions, especially if they were from an older generation or they were digital immigrants. Their criticism of the influence of devices was dismissed as, oh, well, you're a Luddite, right? Which I take issue with in my book. You just don't like technology, you're afraid of it, or you don't understand it. And that line of defense has actually been very successful in silencing a lot of opposition to and questions about technology. So the fact that it's, the guy who helped invented the like button, or Tristan Harris, or a lot of these people who are coming from these digital platforms who kind of know how the sausage is made and they're telling us what's in it, it takes on a new intensity because of that. But we can go back even further, through the Luddite conversations of the 1990s that were happening. There was a movement of a lot of people to criticize the early days of digital technologies and robotics and genetic engineering and all of these things. And those people were similarly dismissed, that they weren't experts in these fields and that they were just afraid of something that was new. But that conversation was also very intimately tied to television criticism that was happening at that time. That a lot of the things that we're saying now about screens are sort of an extension of what people, the concerns that especially parents had about the influence that TV was having on youth back in the day. One of my favorite examples of this is, the TV show The Simpsons. There was an episode where Marge Simpson criticizes cartoons for being too violent and changes the nature of cartoons. That suddenly it's not, the cat and the mouse beating each other over the head with mallets. It's the cat and the mouse sitting on the porch drinking lemonade, like sitting on their rocking chairs. So of course the kids don't want to watch TV anymore if it's boring. And it sort of leads to this golden age in Springfield where the kids are all out, racing soapbox derbies and making things. And they come home at the end of the day and they all sit around the table telling their parents about all the exciting things that they've done, like outside, instead of, the social dilemma where they're all sitting around looking at their screens with nothing to say. So I found a lot of parallels between this like golden age of The Simpsons and this Springfield without cartoons and the pandemic as I was experiencing it here this spring. That I went outside and there are families all walking through the park with their dogs, and there were literally kids with soapbox racers in the parking lot of the school near my house, and skateboards and people running. And I just thought, wow, this is what the world could be like with maybe not no media, but with less media. Bring it on. I'm all for that.
Thanks so much for listening. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast and to our mailing list. And don't forget, my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description below. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.